Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I've been working as a teaching assistant at my old high school for about 6 months now. The job gives me a unique perspective on both sides of the education system. I remember being a student not too long ago, and now I get to see how things work from the other side. There's this one substitute teacher who regularly fills in for various classes. He's probably in his 60s, always wearing these fancy three-piece suits, like he's heading to a board meeting instead of teaching teenagers. The other staff members told me he's semi-retired but picks up substitute shifts to keep himself busy. If you ask me, I think he just likes having an audience for his outdated opinions. I first encountered him when I was assisting in a sophomore English class. A student raised their hand to use the bathroom, and what should have been a simple yes or no turned into a bizarre tirade. The substitute went on a rant about how he believed students shouldn't even be allowed to access bathrooms during class time. As if that wasn't strange enough, he then declared that every classroom should have a potty toilet in the back corner, claiming this would solve everything. The poor student just sat there, legs crossed, while this man continued his speech about his revolutionary idea. He eventually let them go, but not before making sure everyone knew how generous he was being. Last week, he substituted for Mrs. Smith's class, our regular English teacher. After his shift, he had the audacity to send her an email about women in the teaching profession, leading to the incapacity of her students. When she showed me the email, I couldn't believe what I was reading. He literally suggested that teaching should go back to being a men-only profession. The students later told us how he kept trying to start debates about his views on the modern school system, but they all just ignored him and did their assigned work. Smart kids. So, yesterday we had him again for the last period. I was in the classroom helping some students with their assignments while he sat at the desk mumbling about whatever grievances he had that day. Something about the cafeteria food being too modern and how in his day they served proper meals. The students were amazing. They just kept their heads down and focused on their work, completely tuning out his constant commentary about society's downfall. As the final bell rang and everyone started packing up, that's when it happened. One of the students, completely by reflex, probably because most of their teachers are women, thanked him as she was leaving but accidentally called him Miss. I watched his face transform like someone had just told him the earth was flat. First confusion, then shock, then complete horror. He erupted in outrage, bellowing that he was not a miss while his face turned bright red. He stood there sputtering, straightening his fancy suit jacket, like it had personally offended him. The students quickly filed out, trying to hide their smirks. But karma wasn't done with him yet. A few weeks later, I was in the teacher's lounge when I heard a commotion in the hallway. Our fancy suited substitute had taken a spectacular fall right in front of the faculty room. Apparently, he'd been so busy adjusting his tie and lecturing a student about proper walking posture that he missed the wet floor sign. After that double dose of humility, he actually changed. Now when he substitutes, he just quietly takes attendance and lets the students do their work. No more speeches about bathroom policies or gender roles in education. Life wasn't easy where I grew up, so I learned to mind my own business. One time I got blamed for something I didn't do, and that was enough to teach me to be careful. I stuck to small jobs, kept a low profile, and managed to build a steady life. Then, out of nowhere, trouble found me again. Strange things started happening, like a black car parked near my place all the time. I also got creepy phone calls warning me that someone was coming for me. At first, the calls came during dinner time, then they started coming at midnight, 12 a.m., even 4 in the morning. I ignored it all at first, thinking it was just pranks. Then one evening, I found a note under my door saying they knew what I did. My phone started acting strange. Apps would open by themselves, my camera light would turn on randomly, and my battery would drain super fast. I'd catch glimpses of people watching me from afar. Late at night, there'd be knocks on my door, but when I checked through the peephole, no one was there. After connecting the dots, I discovered this entitled private investigator was trying to frame me for a violent robbery his relative committed. He was using his connections with corrupt cops to tamper with evidence and make me look guilty. I later found out they'd chosen me because I roughly matched the description of the actual robber and lived in the same area where the crime happened. They thought I was the perfect scapegoat, someone with a past incident who wouldn't be believed if they tried to defend themselves. I finally confronted him outside my building one rainy evening. He was leaning against his fancy car, acting like he owned the place. I demanded to know why he was targeting me. He just sneered and told me I had no idea what I was getting into. According to him, the evidence already showed I was guilty, and my innocence didn't matter anymore. He even had the nerve to suggest that if I played along they might make things easier for me. His smug attitude made my blood boil. I started gathering evidence myself using skills from my old job at a local news outlet. I took photos of his car when it followed me, recorded the threatening phone calls, and kept a detailed log of every strange incident. I met with my friend at a park to explain everything. I told him about how the investigator was using dirty cops to change records, and even mentioned how he'd bragged about being able to fix the records if things didn't go his way. My friend was shocked, saying he couldn't believe someone could be so brazen. He offered to help me gather evidence and even let me crash at his place when things got too intense at my apartment. I reached out to an honest cop I trusted, and we met at a small diner. I chose this place because it was always busy and the investigator's people would have a hard time following me there. I explained everything that had happened, the calls, the note, and what the investigator had been doing. I showed him my evidence log and played some of the recorded calls. The honest cop told me he'd noticed some strange things about the case. He explained that talking about fixing records was serious business and warned that the investigator's network might be bigger than we thought. He assured me they'd set up a sting operation to catch him, but warned me to be extra careful in the meantime. For the next 2 weeks, I played along with their game while secretly working with the honest cop. I pretended to be scared and desperate, which wasn't hard because I actually was. The investigator fell for it, getting more confident and careless with each passing day. That's when I arranged one final meeting at an old warehouse where the investigator met his corrupt cop friend. I wanted to force the truth out of them. The investigator tried to intimidate me, saying I was way out of my depth and that the evidence put me at the scene. That was all that mattered. His corrupt cop friend chimed in, smugly telling me that nobody would believe my story anyway. The corrupt cop even pulled out a thick file, showing me all the evidence they'd manufactured against me. I stood my ground and told them I had recordings and messages proving they'd tampered with evidence, and I was going to expose everything. Right then, sirens blared and honest cops stormed in. The investigator and his corrupt friend were caught red-handed with all the fake evidence right there on the table. Their faces dropped as they were handcuffed and taken away. The corrupt cop started crying, begging his colleagues not to do this to him. The investigator just glared at me silently, probably wondering how someone like me had managed to outsmart him. The trial was intense and lasted for several days. Every piece of evidence came out: the recordings, altered files, and witness statements. My phone records showed all the harassing calls. Security cameras from my apartment building caught them planting the threatening note. The prosecutor revealed how they tried to frame me for the relative's robbery, and how they'd been doing this to other innocent people for years. The judge wasn't having any of it. He scolded them harshly for betraying the public's trust and corrupting the justice system. He said their actions had undermined the very foundation of justice they were supposed to protect. They got long prison sentences. The investigator got 15 years, his corrupt cop friend got 12, and his relative who committed the robbery got 10. Other officers involved in their scheme were also investigated, and several more arrests followed. The police department had to set up a special task force to review all the cases these corrupt officers had handled. I met the honest cop at the diner afterward. He praised my courage, saying not many people would have stood up to them like I did. I simply told him I couldn't let them destroy my life. I had to fight back. He shared that my case had helped them uncover a whole network of corruption they'd been trying to expose for years. The whole thing changed me. I exposed their corruption and cleared my name, but more importantly, I proved that entitled people who think they're above the law can't always get away with it. These days, I still check my rearview mirror more often than I need to, and unexpected knocks at my door still make my heart race. But I sleep better at night knowing those corrupt people are behind bars, and they can't hurt anyone else anymore. I've been retired for a few years now, but looking back at my career, there's one story that always brings a smile to my face. It's about how buying pizza for my team caused an uproar among other managers. I used to run a programming department with 24 talented people under my supervision. We were known for handling complex projects, and there were times when the workload would become intense. During these periods, my team would work incredibly hard, often staying late and going above and beyond to meet deadlines. After one challenging project, I approached our division head with what I thought was a reasonable request. I asked if the company could buy lunch for my team as a thank you for working extra hours to complete the project ahead of schedule. The division head flatly told me that they didn't have a budget for that kind of thing. The response bothered me. Every year I received a substantial bonus for meeting department goals that were only achieved because of my team's dedication. It didn't seem fair that I couldn't even get them a simple thank you lunch. So I made a decision. Every few months, I started scheduling 2-hour meetings. The first hour was legitimate training, but the second hour, that's when I bring in a feast. Sometimes it was a dozen pizzas. Other times it was huge submarine sandwiches. My team was grateful, but what I didn't anticipate was the attention these lunches would draw. Our building housed about 200 employees, and the smell of fresh pizza would waft through the entire floor. After our meetings, other employees would approach my team members. They would ask about the amazing smell of pizza and whether it was for a special occasion. My team members would explain that I bought it personally and did this regularly to thank them for their hard work. This went on for about 2 years. I'd schedule these lunch meetings, and my team would enjoy their well-deserved treats. But then things started getting interesting. Other managers began complaining to the division head. One manager called it unacceptable, saying their team was asking why they didn't get treated to lunch like the programming department. Another insisted they shouldn't have to spend their own money to compete with this, claiming it was creating a hostile environment. A third manager complained that their entire team was demoralized because they thought they weren't as appreciated as my team. The complaints kept coming. There were 8 departments in total, and mine was the second largest. The other managers were furious that I was showing them up by spending my own money on my team. One day, I was called into the division head's office. They wanted to discuss my lunch meetings. When I asked if there was a problem with the training sessions, they clarified it was about me buying food for my team and how it was causing issues with other managers. I defended my position, explaining that I was using my own money to show appreciation to my team. The division head responded that the other managers felt pressured to do the same and didn't think they should have to spend their personal funds. When I asked if I should stop appreciating my team, the division head looked uncomfortable for a moment, then revealed their solution. They had been authorized to create a discretionary budget for each department, which managers could use for team appreciation events, including lunches. After years of being told there was no budget for team appreciation, my simple act of buying pizza had forced the company to create one. Now every department would have funds to show appreciation to their teams. I told the division head that it sounded like an excellent solution. Later that day, I ran into one of the complaining managers in the break room. They were still fuming and sarcastically asked if I was happy that now everyone had to do special things for their teams because of me. I simply replied that yes, I was happy because now everyone's team could feel appreciated, not just mine. I continued buying lunch for my team occasionally, even after the company budget was implemented. The difference was that now I could use the company card instead of my own. The other managers eventually got over their indignation, and some even admitted that the new appreciation budget had improved their team's morale. I find it amusing that my decision to buy some pizzas caused such an uproar that it led to a company-wide policy change. I've always had a complicated relationship with art. While I love drawing and creating things, I never quite made it a priority in my life. Between working full-time as an accountant and dealing with everyday responsibilities, I only managed to squeeze in some drawing time maybe twice a month, if I'm lucky. My style has always been more on the cartoonish side. You know those slice-of-life web comics you see online? That's pretty much what my art looks like. Simple lines, expressive faces, not too much detail, but I like it that way. It's fun, and it makes me happy. Sure, I know I could probably improve if I practiced more, but I'm content with where I am right now. Last weekend, I was proud of this piece I'd worked on. It was a series of comic panels showing my cat's daily shenanigans, knocking things off shelves, demanding treats at 3 a.m., sitting on my laptop while I'm trying to work. Nothing fancy, but I thought it captured her personality perfectly. I'd even added some funny thought bubbles and small details that I thought really brought out the humor in each situation. The final panel showed her curled up asleep, looking innocent as can be, which anyone with a cat knows is just a calm before the next storm of chaos. I was so pleased with how it turned out that I decided to show it to my mom during our weekly Sunday brunch. Now, my mom isn't exactly an art critic, but she's always had this habit of giving her opinion whether you want it or not. Don't get me wrong, I love her to death, but sometimes her constructive criticism can be a bit, well, you'll see. Excited about my work, I called my mom over to show her the comic I'd drawn of my cat. She took a moment to study it, and her response was a mixed bag. She said she liked it, but then immediately followed up with criticism about how my art style seemed very cartoonish and childish. She even went as far as comparing it to animated cartoons that kids and teens watch, suggesting that a teenager would be capable of creating something similar. The way she said it made it clear she thought she was being helpful, but her words felt like they were diminishing all the effort I'd put into my work. Usually I might have just nodded and changed the subject, but something about that comment, comparing my work to something a teenager could do, just struck a nerve. Maybe it was because I'd spent hours getting the expressions just right, or maybe I was just tired of my style being dismissed as childish. Either way, I decided to respond with a bit of sarcasm. I pointed out that by her logic, all the people who create cartoons, comics, animated movies, and TV shows must be children and teenagers. I could practically see the gears turning in her head as she realized what she'd just implied. That all the professional artists at major animation studios, all the successful comic artists, all the creators of the shows she herself enjoys watching, must be teenagers since they use a similar style. I could tell she was thinking about her favorite animated movies and the skill it takes to create them. She fell silent for a moment, processing what I'd said. Then, to her credit, she actually laughed and admitted I was right, acknowledging that some adults also use that art style. She apologized for her previous comment, and I could tell it was genuine from the slightly embarrassed look on her face. That moment actually shifted something in our dynamic. Since then, she's been more thoughtful with her critiques, not just about my art but in general. She even asked me to draw a comic for her birthday card, specifically requesting my unique style. When I gave her the card featuring a funny comic about our mother-daughter shopping trips, she proudly showed it to everyone at her birthday dinner, bragging about how her daughter was an artist. I still only draw when I can find the time, and my style hasn't changed much. But now when I show my mom my latest doodles, she focuses more on the story I'm telling or the emotions I'm conveying rather than trying to critique the style. She's even started sending me links to other artists with similar styles, pointing out how much their work reminds her of mine. In a good way this time. Last week, she even suggested I should consider posting my comics online, saying that my cat's adventures might make other people laugh too. And honestly, that's all I ever wanted. Just a little appreciation for what I create, not what someone thinks I should be creating. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.